Stephen Sondheim's collaborations with Hal Prince are legendary. They produced some of the most thought-provoking and avant-garde theater on Broadway in the 70s. After Folly's uneven reception and financial failure, Sondheim and Prince decided to pivot to an idea that was generally more conservative to try and make some money. My name is Dr. Dominique Royam, and I'm a music director, conductor, and music communicator, here to help you achieve a deeper connection to the music you love. Follow me on social media at Dominique Royam for more content. Let's talk about the musicals of Hal Prince and Stephen Sondheim. This video is part of my series of the life of Stephen Sondheim. If you'd like to catch up, I will link the playlist in the upper right-hand corner and in the description box below. A Little Night Music is loosely based on Ingmar Bergman's Smiles of a Summer House. It takes place over one summer weekend in a manor house, with an atmosphere in common with Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. Prince felt like he had to rehabilitate his reputation in light of the Follies' financial disaster. Many of his tried and true backers could not participate in A Little Night Music because they had not made any money with Follies, and Prince almost had to have backers auditions. Thanks partly to Prince's strong budgeting and A Little Night Music's lower cost to mount on Broadway, the money soon materialized. With cash in hand, the team of Hal Prince, Arthur Laurents, and Stephen Sondheim got to work. Sondheim wrote several songs based on the Ingmar Bergman film, but they were rejected. The team talked about the feeling of whipped cream with knives, even though Prince said he wanted warmth and compassion. The title came from a reference to Mozart's Eine kleine Nachtmusik made by Sondheim, pointing again to the desired operatic lightheartedness. It was a comedy of manners, and Sondheim started to think in fugettos, canons, contrapuntal duets, and trios, all composed in three-quarter time, a string of waltzes. The most famous number in the show, Send in the Clowns, was a late addition on the road during out-of-town tryouts. Len Cariou, playing Frederick, was supposed to have a song. When Sondheim brought it in, it was for another actress, Glynis Johns, who played Desiree. Sondheim used Glynis Johns' small, silvery voice that couldn't hold a phrase to structure the song. Sondheim wrote a song with lots of pauses for breath, using closed consonants at the end of phraselets, so it didn't seem like the singer's fault for not lengthening the phrase. Sondheim said the song was specifically for someone who can't sing. Let's listen to that song with Dame Judi Dench at the BBC Proms in 2010.
Isn't it rich? Are we a pair? Me here at last on the ground, you in midair. Send in the clowns. Isn't it bliss? Don't you approve? One who keeps tearing around, one who can't move. Where are the clowns? Send in the clowns.
A Little Night Music opened on Broadway on February 25th, 1973 to glowing reviews. The New York Post called it heady, civilized, sophisticated, and enchanting. It ran for 610 performances and won the Tony for Best Musical. Sondheim was being called the poet of the theater. The book scenes between the songs almost acted as recitative in an operatic sense, setting up the subsequent explosion of melody. Around the time of A Little Night Music, the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, in cooperation with the National Hemophilia Foundation, were readying its annual fundraising event, in which they wanted to be a tribute to Hal Prince. When Prince declined, Sondheim was approached. He said yes, and the evening ballooned into a full production with 33 performers, a director, an orchestra, a recording crew, a choreographer, and a packed house, all being overseen by Sondheim. This evening, entitled Sondheim, a Musical Tribute, was the first among many. It was part of the boom in popularity that Sondheim was experiencing after the close of A Little Night Music. Hard on the heels of Company and Follies, this made him a musical dramatist of rare stature. Magazines discovered him as a fresh, new object to be discussed and dissected. He was starting to be known around New York, recognized by restaurant and hotel owners, the ultimate accolade in New York. The stress of working on 3 hugely successful musicals in 4 years was taking its toll. Sondheim had deep smudges under his eyes, and he had some gray hairs popping up, and he was at the beginnings of a paunch. This exhaustion had a lot to do with his working process. As he outlined with Andre Previn for Previn's TV show Previn and Pittsburgh, he tended to work at night with a drink or joint to quiet his mind and to get the ideas flowing. He emphasized that one had to suspend one's critical faculties, saying, "Whenever I tell students about writing, I always say the real problem comes between the time you pick up the pencil and you put it on the paper. Don't censor anything." He generally observed the method that he had learned from Hammerstein and wrote lyrics with a specific rhythm in mind, without knowing how the melody would evolve. Putting the words to music is the easy part compared to finding the words in the first place. He developed a method of working backward, putting the best joke last and working towards the beginning, with each joke having less punch. Sondheim tailored his songs to the situation, which, according to many reviewers, is their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. It is challenging to extract a Sondheim song from the score without losing its effectiveness, usually generated by its place in the narrative. The only song to have made it big on radio and record was Send in the Clowns, which we heard a little earlier. Frank Sinatra recorded it, and it became a big hit. That is not to say no Sondheim record ever did well. Several cast recordings of shows sold very well. Sondheim's next musical, Pacific Overtures, was called by Sondheim the most bizarre and unusual musical to ever be seen in a commercial setting. The idea came from a play written by a law student, John Weidman, about Commodore Perry's visit to Japan in 1853, using his gunboat diplomacy to open up a wholly closed Japan to the outside world. Hal Prince tried to mount the play, but found it not theatrical enough for traditional staging. Prince then wanted to change the focus from a Western point of view to the Japanese point of view. The idea of 3 white men trying to write a musical about the Japanese point of view did not stir up as many issues then as it does today. To tackle the project, Sondheim started by researching Japanese music. He found that the Japanese pentatonic scale has a minor modal feeling, and connected that to the music of Dafala, a composer Sondheim admired. Sondheim said, "I know Dafala's music, so I just started to imitate him. I took the pentatonic scale and bunched the chords together until they resembled that terrific Spanish guitar sound. And then I was able to relate to it because it suddenly had a Western feeling and, at the same time, an Eastern feeling. I became excited. I had seldom written in minor keys, but because I had to have the feeling of the Japanese tonality, this afforded me the opportunity to do it." Each music number would, through the course of the show, sound more and more westernized until the final number, Next, sounded like a promotional song for a commercial. Pacific Overtures opened on Broadway on January 11th, 1976, and ran for 6 months, 193 performances, before closing and losing all of its $650,000 investment. Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street, came about when, in 1973, Sondheim was visiting London for a production of Gypsy starring Angela Lansbury. The play of Sweeney Todd, rewritten by the English playwright Christopher Vaughn, was creating a stir, and Sondheim wanted to see it. What he found was a charming melodrama, one of his favorite forms. When he expressed interest to the producers Richard Barr and Charles Woodward, they said they had already optioned it for Broadway using barroom songs. After meeting with Sondheim and his agent, Bond agreed to let Sondheim option the play for a musical. Sondheim brought on a collaborator to help him streamline the play into a musical, Hugh Wheeler. Sondheim said, as a piece of music, Sweeney Todd jumped into his mind, almost fully formed. Its content dictated a through-composed operatic form, but Wheeler and Sondheim took some time to get the tone right. Sondheim wanted the music to set the show's tone quickly because he said, in most horror films, what really scares you, apart from the lighting and the makeup, is the music. Throughout the show, Sondheim used the Dies Irae, the Catholic Mass for the dead, to set up that foreboding. Besides the Dies Irae, Sondheim said that the script was influenced by the writings of Bernard Herrmann, the film composer responsible for most of the music for the Alfred Hitchcock movies. Sondheim wanted his collaborator, Hal Prince, to direct the work, but Prince was unconvinced. He did not wish to just do a melodrama and thought there was not enough experimental about the structure of the work. Prince and Sondheim had exchanged roles. Sondheim was brimming with enthusiasm, and Prince had doubts. Prince finally landed on a concept that allowed him to gain a foothold into the story. As Sondheim remembers it, Hal's metaphor is that the factory turns out Sweeney Todds. It turns out soulless, defeated, hopeless people. That's what the play is about to him. Sweeney Todd is a product of that age. I think it's not. Sweeney Todd is a man bent on personal revenge, the way we all are in one way or another, and has nothing whatsoever to do with the time he lived in, as far as I'm concerned. Sondheim accepted the vision, as he knew that a small production would come more easily than a large production. Prince's vision was solidified with the set, a 19th century iron foundry from Rhode Island that they had shipped to New York and set up in the Ursus Theater. Critic Jack Kroll described it as part cathedral, part factory, part prison that dwarfed and degraded the swarming denizens of the lower orders. Sondheim was particular in who he wanted to cast in the show. Prince and Sondheim approached Lou Caro for Sweeny, and he thought the work was mad, but he read the play and changed his mind. Melodrama is hard to act. You have to do everything with conviction, play it as straight as possible, or else the audience will realize the situation's absurdity. It was a challenge that Cariou met. Sondheim wanted Angela Landsbury for Mrs. Lovett, but at that time, Landsbury was a big deal in the theater world. She pointedly said to Sondheim, "Your show is not called Nellie Lovett, it's called Sweeney Todd, and I'm the second banana." Sondheim had to audition the show for her, writing a few songs for her and talking about her character. Once they settled on the idea of Mrs. Lovett being a dotty music hall character, Landsbury got it and joined the production. Let's hear the opening to the show, The Ballad of Sweeney Todd, in its first iteration. This is a national touring production recording with Angela Lansbury and George Hearn. Listen to the uneasiness Sondheim weaves through the ballad with the incessant vacillations in the woodwinds, paired with declamations in the muted brass.
Attend the tale of Sweeney Todd. His skin was pale and his eye was odd. He shaved the faces of gentlemen who never thereafter were heard of again. He trod a path that few have trod, did Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street. He kept a shop in London town, a fancy clients and good renown. And what if none of their souls were saved? They went to their maker impeccably shaved. By Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street. Swing your razor wide, Sweeney, hold it to the sky. Really goes the blood of those who are alive.
Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, opened on Broadway on March 1st, 1979, and ran for 557 performances. The critics loved the show, a triumph of audacious theatricalism. In sheer ambition and size, there's never been a bigger musical on Broadway. And total theater, a brilliant concept, and shattering experience were some of the reviews. The New York Times critic Richard Elder said, "There is more artistic energy, creative personality, and plain excitement in Sweeney Todd than in a dozen average musicals." Schuler G. Chapman, the former general manager of the Metropolitan Opera, said that when he came to opening night, Harold Clurman, the dean of theater critics, came charging across the lobby at me and said, "Why didn't you put this on at the Met?" And I replied, "I would have put it on like a shot if I'd had the opportunity." And I would have. There would have been screams and yells, and I wouldn't have given a damn. Because it's an opera, a modern American opera. Prince restaged the show for the New York City Opera at Lincoln Center 5 years later in 1984. Thank you for joining me in this series about the life of Sondheim. If you want to learn more about the composer, an excellent biography is Stephen Sondheim, A Life by Meryl Seacrest. A link to it can be found in the description box below. Like this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more. What do you want to learn about next? Leave me a comment down below. You can also support the making of these videos on Patreon. These videos take over 20 hours of research to complete, so Patreon is a great way to show your support. The bibliography for this video can be found on my website, dominiqueroyam.com. Interested in seeing my process? I document it on my social media, so follow me for more updates. My handles are listed below. Thanks again, and see you in my next video.